Good morning and welcome to goldenrim Resources Investor Webinar and Conference Call to discuss the company's maiden mineral resource estimate for the Kada Gold Project in Guinea. All attendees are in listen mode only. If you would like to ask a question, please enter it into the Q&A panel within Zoom. I will now hand over to goldenrim's Managing Director, Craig Mackay.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks everyone for attending today. So the objective today is to update investors on our maiden resource for the Kada Gold Project in Guinea. So I'll give a brief presentation about the resource and I suppose our plans for the project moving forward, and also a few I suppose high-level comments about what we think is the significance of the resource. So I'll just start off with a presentation, just a few slides, and then we'll get into some questions. So first slide is really just a location to show everyone where Kada sits. So it's in the eastern part of Guinea in West Africa. It sits in the Siguiri Basin, which is quite a prolific gold area in West Africa. Some very large gold mines in the Siguiri Basin, of which the Siguiri mine, and I'll talk more about this in a minute, is just to the north of our Kada Gold Project. And there's a gold endowment at Siguiri now, totaling about 13 million ounces. We do have a second gold project in West Africa, in Burkina Faso, Kori, 2 million ounce project. At this stage, we have it on hold. While we focus on Kada, we think it's a much better opportunity for the company. Kori still needs some more work. We need to find a bit more high grade, we think, to proceed towards development, whereas Kada, with its thick oxide zone, very much looks like one that we can fast track. If we look at Guinea, it's very much a mining country, second largest producer of bauxite in the world, and the company, or goldenrim, does have a leg up there in the fact that our chairman has already developed a mine in Guinea. He has a bauxite operation called Bel-Air that he's developed on the coast. And probably the only other point too with Guinea is the fact of it being very much underexplored. So whilst it has nearly 12% of the prospective greenstone rocks in West Africa, it still only has about 6% of the gold production. So if we focus in now, so this is the eastern side of Guinea in the Siguiri Basin. So Siguiri Basin in the pale green in the slide on the right. So our Kada Gold Project sits smack bang in the middle of the Siguiri Basin. Presently, we have 200 square kilometres. We have a deal on the table, just waiting government approval to give us another 100 square kilometres, which is a licence to the east in that Kada Gold Project package. I think the main point when you look at this slide is the fact that there's a major structure, north-south structure, that runs through Kada. And if you head to the north, there's a private company, Siguiri Gold, with 1 million ounces, about 10, 15 k's north. And then 35 kilometres north along the same structure, you've got the Siguiri mine, Anglo Gold Ashanti, which is upwards of 13 million ounces now. The mineralisation in both those deposits is the same as what we have at Kada. So very thick zones of quartz, sulphide, tourmaline stockwork, and very deep zones of weathering. So all three deposits have this really thick oxide zone, which is really important economically, and I'll talk about that again shortly as well. I suppose the other excitement we've had recently in the Siguiri Basin is the discovery of Bankan, predictive discovery, 100 kilometres out to the southwest. And then I suppose as a general comment, the Siguiri Basin very much underexplored, and a lot of that is to do with the thick laterite cover that covers the basin, so 3 to 10 metres of laterite, which obscures the bedrock beneath, and has made it harder to discover gold in the past. But with techniques like auger drilling now being widely used, I think we're going to see a lot more in terms of discovery in the Siguiri Basin moving forward. So I now get on to the resource. So end of last week, we put out our maiden inferred resource for Kada, 25 0.5 million ounces at 1.1 grams for 930 ounces of gold. I'll go through some details on the resource in a minute, but just some high-level comments on that. We're very pleased with the Maiden resource. I think to get nearly 1 million ounces in a Maiden is a really good endeavour, and certainly in the matter of 12 months of drilling that out. I think it stacks up really well when we look at some of our peers in West Africa. If we look at companies like Tito, for example, their Maiden resource was 700,000 ounces, all inferred, the same as Kada. Their Maiden resource over 2.7 kilometres of strike. If we look at the resource we've just put out on Kada, it's still only over 1 kilometre of strike. And we've identified now a 15-kilometre gold corridor, which is prospective for this oxide gold right along its length. And so we start to sort of wave our hands around if it's 1 kilometre of 15. We think there's a lot more to come from Kada. So very much this Maiden resource is the start, it's not the end. And we certainly expect to be able to build on that quite quickly as we continue our drilling. I think the other thing about it, and I'll talk about the oxide gold at the moment, is it's very much a rare opportunity. We have a very broad zone of oxide gold mineralisation at Kada, 600 metres wide. Now that's rare. I mean, you don't see many deposits that sort of width, and certainly not when you have this soft material that is deep, potentially free milling. It looks like we'll have very good strip ratios at Kada. And what it's shaping up to be is very much a sort of almost a large earth moving exercise, low cost, moving this soft material at a much lower cost base than what you do in deposits that are narrow and hard rock. And if we look at, I suppose, the industry at the moment, these sort of things are rare. It's very hard to find something like this in WA now, for example. And this is the immense opportunity that West Africa presents, and that you do have these type of deposits that are still being located. If we look at the resource itself, certainly you think a good quality calculation. RPM have now done 3 resource estimates for us. We believe it's a conservative estimate. They used a top cut of 17 grams. They actually restricted the areas of influence around high grade, so anything above 10 grams. We used a cutoff or a gold price for our cutoff grade in the pit of 1764 an ounce, and we used 1900 an ounce for our optimised pit shell. So when we're starting to see gold prices tapping on the door of 2000, I mean, I think there's a lot more upside in that. And then I think the other thing probably with the resource, as I mentioned, it's conservative, it's inferred. We certainly feel with infill drilling at Kada that we will see potentially a bit of an uplift in grade. It's certainly been our experience in the past in West Africa. So our Kori resource in Guinea, when we did our infill drilling for indicated, we got a 17% increase in grade. So I'll get on to the resource now. So look, the key of the resource is the oxide. So we have this oxide transitional material, more than 70% of the resource, nearly 700,000 ounces at slightly higher grade at 1.2, extending from surface down to, on average, about 100 metres below surface, and sitting in a corridor that's nearly 600 metres wide. And in there we have all these parallel lodes, and they're thick lodes, ranging from 10 to 40 metres in width, very close together, and from surface and down to basically where the drilling stops. So the bulk of our drilling stops at about 120 metres below surface, and essentially that's been the constraint on the lower part of the resource at this stage. So the drilling to date, generally 80 by 80 metres, which is why we have an inferred resource. By infilling that drilling, let's say to 40 by 40, we think we can convert a lot of this inferred to indicated fairly quickly. So the resource itself, based on 23 diamond holes, 80 RC holes, and the cost of the resource at this stage, including our acquisition, about $8 an ounce US. Photo there, or sort of picture there of the resource on the right in our pit shell. You can see the dimensions of the resource. But I think the thing to point out is look at the stuff that's sticking out beneath the resource shell at the moment. So certainly potential to extend the resource at depth. And particularly that is our intention, and to look at higher grade material when we do that. And the other is mineralisation sitting immediately outside, and you can see an intercept there to the northeast, where we've got a 66-metre intercept in oxide, directly north of the pit, about 400 metres north of the pit, that we believe will bring immediate extensions. So just a section through the resource itself. I can shows you the loads that we have that comprise that corridor, 600-metre wide corridor. They seem to be thicker in the west, so there seems to be sort of a thicker bed, sort of footwall component, where we have loads there that are sort of 30 and 40 metres thick, whereas in the east, they're ranging from maybe 30 to 10. You can see they're all open at depth. You can see the bottom of our pit in the yellow line there. The bulk of our drilling at the moment, angled RC holes down to 150 metres, so vertical extent of about 120. So completely open at depth. If you look at that section there, we've got intersections there like 29 metres at 8.5, where we have nothing beneath. Intersections there 47 metres at 1.9, again, nothing beneath. So we certainly think by a few deeper holes beneath zones like that, we can convert areas like this into resource very quickly. And certainly if we focus on some of the higher grade, I think we may see a bit of uplift in grade as well. So certainly in terms of the immediate resource area, we intend a bit of deeper drilling, and we intend some drilling along strike as well. So we start now looking at the upside, I suppose outside the resource area at Kada. So in the immediate area around the resource, the prospect that the resource is sitting in, we call Basin. So directly north, we've just done some drilling up to about 1 kilometre, 1.5 kilometres to the north, and about 500 metres to the south. We hit oxide gold in a lot of the holes that we drilled, and we hit some nice broad zones. So as I mentioned just then, 66 metres at 1 gram, 400 metres to the north, a number of other zones there. So oxide zones, nearly 30 metres thick. Again, material near surface. So the plan will be to drill some holes around them and to bring them into the resource. The resource is also open out to the west. We have some quite anomalous auger and soil geochemistry to the west of the resource that hasn't been tested. So there is potential for the width of the resource to be extended out to the west, as I mentioned, to the north and south. And then I think the thing that really excites us about Kada is the regional upside. So all the drilling pretty well, certainly all the resource drilling, is all within that blue square there in the figure on the right. We've done about 40 kilometres of auger drilling at Kada, over 4,000 holes, to test the bedrock beneath the laterite cover. So these are holes that are generally 10 metres thick, or deep, I should say. Just getting beneath the laterite, giving us a sample that we analyse for gold. From that work, we're able to produce that map that I'm showing there. So it shows you the anomalous gold geochemistry and bedrock beneath the laterite. And what you can clearly see is this corridor, which we call the Kada corridor, gold corridor, which currently extends for 15 kilometres, extends through the resource area, and all that anomalous gold outside the resource area has yet to be tested. And we certainly believe that in terms of particularly the oxide gold, we've got a lot more potential to extend that mineral resource and oxide along that corridor. At the moment, we have 6 priority zones we intend to drill. The prospect names are there. They're a bit of a mixture of anomalous gold in auger, but also we have some areas where we're getting some quite high rock chip samples from the limited exposures that we do see through the laterite. And one of those is called Mackay. It sits up in the north here, and I'll just show you some photos from there. So it's one of the few areas where we actually get a bit of a window through the laterite. There's some artisanal workings there where they've cut through the laterite, exposing the weathered bedrock beneath. What's exciting about Mackay is that there's quite an extensive auger anomaly that we picked up over 1 kilometre long, nearly half a kilometre wide. But more importantly is where they've cut through the laterite, they've exposed stockwork veining in altered or weathered sediments. We've sampled that material and we're getting some amazing gold grades. So this area here, we can see the little working beneath the laterite. We got 170 grams gold from that stockwork. So very much this is a high priority target for us to drill moving forward, and certainly a high priority for more oxide gold. And if you look at the figure there on the right, this is stepping out again. So as I mentioned, we've got a major structure running through Kada, Siguiri mine trend. It's essentially the same structure, or it is the same structure that the Kada gold corridor lies along, which you can see in our licenses there down in the south. So we have a Kada gold corridor extending for 15 kilometres with multiple targets along the corridor and the resource in the middle. And then 35 kilometres to the north, you've got the Siguiri mine complex, where they've got multiple pits, which largely have been focused in oxide. They're now getting into the fresh, but multiple pits where you've got 13 million ounces over 11 kilometres of strike. So we think, wow, you know, what could we have at Kada once we start to test, you know, this corridor outside the resource area. Just a photo in the middle, just showing you the deep weathering. So this is over 100 metres below surface, and yet we've still got fully oxidised material, incredibly soft, you know, so soft that we can cut some of this material with a knife. So in terms of the mining attributes of Kada, you know, we've got this really broad, shallow oxide mineralisation that's very soft, potentially free digging, so low cost mining, low cost processing. The indications from previous metallurgical test work that Newmont completed is that will be positive. We'll shortly put out our test work results. We're getting 660 kilos of sample tested at ALS in Perth right now, and those results are quite imminent. And then in terms of infrastructure, it also has a lot of stuff going for us. We've got the Nigeria River 3 kilometres away. We've got paved access to a major mining centre at Siguiri, which is 60 kilometres to the northeast. So just where we're going to go from now. So very much wanting to expand the resource base, but focusing particularly on the oxide material. So testing along the Kada corridor, initially RC testing beneath our auger drilling, or areas where we've got the good rock chip samples. We'll also do some geophysics. We think the geophysics will be quite useful in picking up maybe the deeper oxide areas. And we will do some additional auger drilling to test new areas elsewhere in the license package. In terms of the resource area, we will drill some holes there as well, some diamond holes beneath some of the high grade areas like the 29 metres at 8.5, and a bit of infill drilling around some of the high grade oxide material. Our MET test work is due very shortly. And then we do have some other projects in goldenrim. As I mentioned, we've got the Kori gold project in Burkina. We do have a copper, a silver lead zinc property in Chile. At the moment, work on those properties are essentially on hold. They're not regarded as non-core, particularly with the way we're proceeding at Kada, and we're looking at options of how we can realise value with those, and one of those might be divestment. So that's sort of the end of the presentation. So I'll open it up to questions.
Thanks, Craig. Just a reminder, guys, that if you would like to ask a question, please enter it in the Q&A panel within the Zoom. And we have a couple that have come through already. With drilling continuing at Kada, when do you expect to have an update to the MRE?
Look, at this stage, Simon, I suppose we're working potentially on another update at the end of this year. Obviously, that will depend on drill results and where that all heads, but at the moment, that's the plan for the next update.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Another one here. What offers the best value for drilling now, stepping out the Kada MRE or drilling at depth?
Look, I mean, I suppose the fact that the current resource covers a kilometre of a 15-kilometre corridor, you know, undoubtedly that you know, drilling along the corridor, or you know, drilling outside the resource, stepping out, you know, it's got the potential for an exponential increase in the mineral resource. If we start getting oxide gold in various areas right along that corridor, well, then the resource can grow very quickly. I would still say, though, that drilling at depth is interesting. I mean, maybe incremental increase, but certainly interesting in the fact that we've got, very high-grade material like that 29 metres at 8.5, which remains open. And you can see that by simply drilling a couple of holes beneath that, you'll get possibly significant impact on the resource.
Thanks, Craig. Just another one's come through. Congratulations on the excellent results. Do you have an exploration target for this property?
Not at this stage, no, Simon.
Another one here. What are the challenges of operating in West Africa and in Guinea in particular?
I suppose West Africa is a bit varied. I mean, certain parts of West Africa, certainly security is an issue. If we want to compare, say, operating there to Australia. Certainly that's something that we've had to consider as we operate in Burkina Faso, for example. In terms of Guinea, we don't have those issues. So in terms of security, it's no different really to working in Australia, and we're quite safe to work there. There is market perceptions in West Africa that we have to deal with. So, we do have coups in West Africa that we don't see here, but, realistically on the ground, it generally doesn't impact our operations. And we've just seen that in Guinea, and we've just seen that in Burkina Faso. I think overall, my comment would be that it's actually not a lot different operating in West Africa to it is in Australia. Our cost bases aren't hugely different. Challenges are generally much the same. That's what we would have here. And if anything, there's a few things that are a little easier there. Certainly, our access and approval regime for drilling is easier. We can basically be drilling within weeks of making a decision to go ahead. And our assay turnaround in Guinea is actually pretty rapid. We can get assays back within a fortnight of submitting them to the lab. And certainly doesn't seem to be the case over here. And probably our access to good staff is a little easier. It's just, we don't have the same competition, I don't think, in West Africa. And we've been able to put together a really good team in West Africa. I think we'd have a bit more of a challenge here.
Okay, great. Thank you. We've got another one here. Kada has become the focus project over the past 12 months. What's happening with the other projects? Will there be any work on them in 2022?
Look, we're not planning a lot of work. Essentially, both other projects are on care and maintenance. With Kori in Burkina, and there's been a recent coup in Burkina. And I suppose we've been waiting to see what the wash up is of that. But really, we have work on hold in Burkina because we are focused on Kada and Guinea. And it is hard for us to be running two projects at the same time, particularly with the pace that we're working at with Kada. With Kori, it still needs more work. We think there's not enough high grade there yet to proceed with a development decision, even though we do have 2 million ounces. We believe we need a bit more high grade, particularly to be processing at the start of an operation to proceed. So it probably still needs another 12 months or more of exploration before we could make a decision to undertake a scoping or something like that. So we are looking at our options on Kori, and one of those options would be a divestment. In Chile, we have a property there which is basically has two parts. There's a southern portion which is a porphyry copper target. We're talking to parties about a potential deal on that, and then we have a northern portion which has a silver lead zinc resource, and we're looking at alternative options for how we might create value on that asset.
Okay, great. Thank you. There are no further questions at this time. I'll now hand back to Craig for closing remarks.
Yeah, look, I think it's pretty simple, Simon. I think as we're seeing gold price approaching $2,000 an ounce again, I think we've got a project in Kada that we've got a great maiden resource, nearly 1 million ounces. As I mentioned, if you look at some of our peers, there's not many that actually come out with so much in a maiden resource. And I think the key with Kada is it's just the start. we're starting with nearly 1 million ounces, but you can see from the Kada corridor that we have a lot more room to move and to make it bigger. So I think, you're really looking at a company that has got a great base, a great foundation. But as we move through this next 12 months and the drilling that we're planning, we think we're going to increase that resource inventory quite significantly.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.